Hi everyone, my name is Jérémy Demestre, and on behalf of the whole Youthmundi team, I want to wish everyone happy holidays. We all hope that 2021 will be better than 2020. It will not be very difficult, I believe, and that we can go back to our normal life, or at least something that will look like our normal lives. Past year, and because it was our first year, so past year, Youthmundi offered a little gift to all its clients. But this year, we decided to do it a bit differently. And we decided to do, in the name of our clients, a donation to an NGO. And this NGO is Mobilizing for Rights Associates, or MRA, or I can pronounce it as well, IMRA, which means woman in Arabic. And sorry for my accent. And MRA is an international non-profit organization which is based in Rabat, in Morocco, but which is also working all across the Maghreb. We decided to interview Stéphanie Willman-Borda and Saïda Kouzi, who are the two co-founders of MRA, to learn more about their missions, why they built the organization, and to spread the word about it. Because we believe that what they are doing is really incredible, and we hope that more people can hear about their work. But before that, let me do a little introduction to explain how I know MRA and why we chose this organization for the donation, and also how we chose it actually. To put in simple, it's very likely that Youthmundi will not exist today without MRA. I met with Stéphanie in 2012, I believe, the first time, when I was a young student in international law. As most of my fellow students, I was at this time, at the same time, amazed by international law promises, you know, to promote peace, human rights, and to defend our common values like the environment or everything which is important to most of lawyers worldwide and people generally. And at the same time, deeply disappointed by the fact that it doesn't work so well in a lot of cases. We have plenty of treaties, of committees, of courts, arbitral tribunals, soft law, etc., etc. And all of that is very important and has improved the situation for sure. But the gap between the theoretical law and rights that have been proclaimed like 70 years ago or a bit less, but the gap of these rights and the concrete situation on the ground is still very huge. And we all know that. And it gives us a bit the feeling that, yeah, what's the point? It doesn't work. So maybe let's stop international law and let's go back to nationalism. Okay. So the big question that I had this time was, is there anything that can be done to improve how the global legal system is working today? That's when I met Stéphanie first and discovered about the work she and Saïda are doing at MRA. I don't want to tell instead of you what MRA is doing, and I will let you explain what you do, but just want to explain a little part of your activity, which is about training and helping lawyers to use the convention and the elimination of all forms of discrimination against women before the municipal courts. And as part of the capacity building that you provide to them, you built a guide to know how to use the convention and how to plead it before a judge. And with a group of students, I guess in 2012, we translated this guide from English to French. And at the first page of this guide, there is a quote from Shanti Dairam, who she's a founder of an NGO, which is dedicated to the implementation of the convention in Asia Pacific. And I will read this quote because it has been I believe it is very good and it was very important to me. So she said, "There is much that can be done. When I am asked, what can the convention really do for women? I reply softly, what do you plan to do with the convention?" And this has been really a wake-up call for me. I believe that, improving the rule of law is not so much about creating more international law. Of course, there are new areas where we need new treaties or anything, but the big issue is more about implementation and enforcement of the norms. And all over the world, there is the same group of people in each country who is already in charge of this implementation and enforcement of the law. These are the municipal judges and the municipal lawyers. These are the people who make it work really. And this was really the founding idea of Jus Mundi, using technology to empower the legal community worldwide in strengthening the international rule of law by providing them with an easy access, and I think the easy is very important, to all international law, including its application by the judges worldwide, the courts worldwide. Of course, this is huge and very complicated, and I guess we are maybe at 1% of what we want to do with Jus Mundi. And we have not touched upon human rights yet, because we quickly understood that we had to proceed domain of law per domain of law, and we have chosen first fields that were easy and to start as a company. But Jus Mundi will continue to grow and to expand. Yesterday we did investment arbitration. Tomorrow it will be human rights, environment, social rights. Also, we're very interested in all of that. So as you understand, MRA has been a real source of inspiration for us, but also of support, because during the first months, years, while building the project, it was very complicated. And Stephanie and Saida provided us with a lot of support, and also psychologically, to say, no, what you do can be useful, and continue. That's a good project, and this has been also very important to continue at the beginning. So that's for the little story, and why it was very important for us to today have the opportunity to thank you a bit for what you did for us. But we did not want to impose the choice to the team, because we believe that there are several organizations that are doing a very useful work, which is in accordance with our values. And so we selected several NGOs, and we asked the team of Jus Mundi to vote for one of them. And we are super happy that MRA had the biggest number of votes, and you are far beyond the second. So I'm very happy today to have this opportunity and to welcome Stephanie and Saida for this interview. We will be doing the interview in English and French, but normally you have the subtitles in French and or English, so you just have to pick the subtitles in the good language, and you will be able to follow the whole interview. So thanks again for being there. And we will start by a question which is for both of you, which is to know a bit about yourself and about your background. So tell us what you did before setting up MRA, and I think we'll start with Stephanie.
Hi, thank you very much, Jean-Remy. Thanks to everyone at Jus Mundi. The decision and the award was a big surprise to us, and so we're quite grateful and excited. And thank you for the introduction as well, because I think it shows really how social change for human rights happens. There was an idea, we kind of shared it, and other people picked it up and appropriated it and kind of ran with it, and exciting things like that emerge, right? So that's how social change happens. And it also happens, even though it makes us feel old, it also happens through those very long-term relationships between people and between institutions. So speaking of long-term, it's kind of hard for me to say what I did before MRA, because Saida and I have been working here in Morocco together for 20 years. So it's hard to remember, but I personally have always been only worked in the context of nonprofits working for women's rights. Whether it was, back when I was a student in the United States, I was both a staff member for women's rights nonprofits and a volunteer sexual assault crisis counselor. in a local hospital. I was lucky enough during my educational training to do my internships with local human rights NGOs overseas in other countries, in Pakistan, in Egypt, and in the Netherlands. And that was a very sort of humbling experience and taught me a lot. And then professionally, I always wanted to do women's legal and human rights in Morocco. So I did a double law degree. I did my common law JD in the United States at Columbia Law School. And then I did my maîtrise en droit at Paris Sorbonne to have that double formation, to be able to work on women's human rights more appropriately within the Moroccan context.
Thank you very much, Stephanie. Yeah, you're right. Inspiration is very important, and we need these connections to be able to grow all together. And I had the opportunity to visit you several times in Morocco, and that's when I could meet Saïda. Saïda, I let you introduce yourself and tell us what you did before.
Merci beaucoup, Jean-Rémy. Merci beaucoup pour la présentation et surtout merci beaucoup à toute l'équipe de GEMADI pour cette opportunité et de continuer le travail de collaboration. Donc, merci. Si je veux me présenter, je vais dire qu'il y a vraiment mon expérience professionnelle. Et là, je suis juriste de formation. Et mon expérience professionnelle, elle a démarré dans un bureau d'avocat où j'avais l'occasion de traiter des cas des femmes et aussi et surtout de constater le vide juridique et les lacunes juridiques dans la loi marocaine, chose qui m'a poussée à devenir défenseur de droits humains et à être professionnel de métier comme défenseur de droits humains. Avant cela, j'ai adhéré à plusieurs ONG, surtout l'Association marocaine des droits humains, où j'ai grandi et j'ai appris beaucoup de choses. Mais c'est aussi grâce à cette étape que j'ai encore eu la conviction qu'il faut se spécialiser sur les droits humains de la femme si on veut vraiment créer le changement. Donc, avant de rejoindre mon travail actuel, j'ai travaillé pendant longtemps dans plusieurs ONG féminines. Mon travail actuel me permet d'avoir le contact avec les ONG, avec les avocats dans plusieurs pays et sur plusieurs sujets relatifs aux droits humains des femmes. Tout cela me permet vraiment de faire mon travail, de développer les projets, de mettre en place et aussi d'évaluer tout ce que nous faisons, surtout au nord d'Afrique, avec une approche globale et systémique sur les droits humains des femmes. Donc, c'est un peu...
Merci Saïda, j'aime beaucoup que tu aies dit devenir professionnelle, défenseuse des droits. Et j'ai aussi cette image que les juristes sont des défenseurs des autres personnes. Et d'ailleurs, pour la petite histoire, c'est pour ça que le logo de Yousmundi est un bouclier. Parce qu'on croit que le droit peut être une défense justement pour les gens et qu'il faut qu'il peut être utilisé ainsi. Now it's a question for Stephanie. If you can tell us a bit more about what is MRA mission, what prompted its creation, and in how many countries do you operate today?
Mm-hmm. Sure. Well, as you mentioned, we're based, and we've always been based in Morocco. And we currently have projects going on, not just in Morocco, across the country, but in Tunisia as well. We've worked in Tunisia for quite many years. And then we've also had occasion to work several years in Algeria and as well as at a distance in Libya. So we try to cover most of the Maghreb. Our mission really specifically is to promote women's legal and human rights through initiatives, through legal empowerment initiatives. And so even though Saïda and I both were trained as lawyers, when we talk about doing legal empowerment initiatives, it's much broader than just legislation or court decisions. With legal empowerment, we're trying to use the law and legal concepts and legal systems as organizing tools to help strengthen the disadvantaged, for the disadvantaged groups of people, like women in particular, to influence and have an impact on how the state services responds to their issues, right? With an overarching goal of creating social change. So we do situate our work within our mission in the context of promoting women's human and legal rights through this broad definition of legal empowerment. And we take a very holistic approach to our work, or a holistic approach to creating social change. We're focused on creating social change in a couple of different areas. Obviously, the law is one of them, whether it's legislation or in court decisions. We're also a second area of law in this holistic approach. Second area in this holistic approach is structural change. The systems and the procedures and the capacities of the institutions, like law enforcement, like health services, like the justice system, to be responsive to women's human rights needs. There's obviously always an element of cultural change, people's beliefs, people's attitudes, people's values, people's practices. And then finally, the fourth element of change that's part of our mission is to foster relationships change, whether it's relationships between NGOs and the women they serve, or between NGOs and the government, state actors, and public authorities that they work with, or a whole host of other different relationships that have traditionally been based on discriminatory factors, based on hierarchy, et cetera, that basically prevents people from exercising and benefiting from their human rights. So we take that holistic approach to our work and made that our deliberate mission. And probably we decided to prompt, what prompted the creation probably of MRL was this need to change relationships, change the way that people were working, have a way of a model of operating that really practiced what we preach in terms of human rights. How do you operationalize, how do you not just talk about international human rights, but how do you operationalize them in practice? And how your behaviors and all of your operating practices really reflect the human rights values that you promote, whether it's by having decentralized way of operating, horizontal relationships, or especially, a grassroots level of strategy. Again, if the goal and the mission is to strengthen the disadvantaged, to have impact.
Thank you very much for this explanation. And yeah, that's also linked with what you said at the beginning, like the change comes with a long term and like a deep work on many aspects of the society to improve the situation. Okay, so I have another question now for Saïda, and we switch to French. Saïda, quels sont les accomplissements de MRA à ce jour? Quels sont les chiffres que vous voudriez donner sur l'impact que MRA a au quotidien?
Depuis le début, MRA il a travaillé sur une diversité de sujets et de thèmes et comme a décrit Stéphanie, avec une approche assez inclusive. Donc, de l'éducation populaire des femmes à l'accompagnement juridique des femmes vers les diversités des administrations, à la recherche-action sur les différents sujets qui touchent les droits humains de la femme, le monitoring et documentation surtout de la réponse de l'État sur les questions des femmes, les litiges stratégiques, surtout avec les avocats, les réformes législatives pour le renforcement de la législation et le renforcement des droits humains des femmes, et aussi le plaidoyer international. Mais pour dire vrai, au début quand on a démarré, on s'était posé la question, on commence par où, par qui et comment. Je me rappelle très bien, on avait une réunion ensemble et on a dit, OK, par où on va commencer? Et la réponse, c'était vraiment d'une simplicité. Non, il faut commencer par le zéro. Il faut commencer par le début. Donc, et grâce à un programme d'éducation populaire aux droits humains des femmes qui vise vraiment à renforcer les capacités individuelles et collectives des femmes à connaître leurs droits, défendre leurs droits et se mobiliser pour vraiment le changement et rendre les femmes des partenaires et pas des bénéficiaires. Nous avons vraiment fait un travail immense qui a touché des milliers de femmes à travers le Maroc, des centaines d'ONG qui maintenant travaillent ce programme, continuent à travailler ce programme indépendamment de nous. Donc, c'est un programme qui a été adopté par tout le monde sur terrain. Ce programme nous a permis vraiment d'aller vers les femmes. Partout au Maroc, au Sahara, au Atlas, au Rif, partout dans le... Parce que c'est un programme qui ne nécessitait pas les moyens, qui ne nécessitait pas beaucoup d'efforts. Il suffit d'avoir un groupe de femmes, même dans les champs, dans l'usine, dans un quartier, et une animatrice qui parle langage des femmes, et le programme, il pourra être fait. Ce programme nous a permis de toucher des groupes de femmes que jusqu'alors, à cette époque, n'étaient pas du tout inclus dans les différents programmes. À titre d'exemple, les travailleuses de sexe, les femmes à Mazir, les femmes en situation de handicap, dans plusieurs catégories. Certaines régions qui sont marginalisées, lointains, que ce soit dans les grandes villes comme des quartiers pauvres ou que ce soit les zones rurales que les programmes ne touchaient pas à cette époque. Donc, grâce à ce programme, ça nous a permis vraiment dès le départ de travailler partout dans le Maroc. Et ça, vraiment, c'est le plus grand atout actuellement, parce qu'après, on a, même pour passer aux différents programmes d'accompagnement juridique, c'était facile d'avoir accès aux femmes, c'était facile d'avoir accès aux différents avocats, c'était facile de réaliser n'importe quel programme qu'on ciblait. Donc, grâce à ce programme et bien sûr aux autres programmes qui ont suivi, comme le programme d'accompagnement juridique aux femmes ou les différentes associations, ils peuvent vraiment accompagner les femmes devant la justice pour un peu garantir que ce qu'ils ont vu dans le programme d'éducation juridique, il va être, on va dire, à la limite, il va y avoir quelqu'un qui va contrôler, qui va faire le monitoring de qu'est-ce qui est pratiqué sur terrain. Et ça ne reste pas seulement des paroles qu'on donne aux femmes, parce qu'à un certain moment, la réalité est devenue un peu entre ce que les femmes ils ont appris dans ce programme et la réalité des journaliers des femmes est devenu un peu le grand écart. Donc, le programme d'accompagnement juridique a renforcé ce programme. Après, il y avait le programme de l'éthique stratégique avec les avocats pour les initier à appliquer les normes internationales dans les litiges locaux. Aussi un peu pour compléter ce que les femmes ils ont compris sur les normes internationales et de garantir qu'ils vont parler le même langage avec même les avocats. Donc, c'est des programmes enchaînés, un programme est réussite, mais qui ne mène à la suite. Donc, la réussite en soi, c'est la succession des programmes. C'est aussi l'application de différentes concernées, que ce soit les femmes, que ce soit les avocats, que ce soit les autorités. Tout le monde est intégré dans ces programmes. Actuellement, vraiment, on a une liste de contacts d'une centaine d'ONG qui ont bénéficié et qui sont partenaires dans le programme. Des centaines, des milliers de femmes qui ont bénéficié aussi de nos programmes. Et même plusieurs fois, on a eu, je me rappelle, un des ambassades sans citer, il était dans une mission dans une région lointaine au Sahara et il a eu la surprise de trouver un des programmes que eux ils ont financé, vraiment dans plein bled, en plein Sahara, dans les et ça fait un peu. Ben c'est aussi une réussite, même si nous, on n'a pas forcément travaillé directement avec cette association, mais le boule de neige, elle a fait son affaire et on est arrivé partout.
Ouais, bah, alors merci beaucoup, Saïda. Et c'est vrai que je pense aussi que ça vous a beaucoup appris sur le besoin finalement des personnes avec lesquelles pour lesquelles vous faites ça, et de rester connecté directement à ça, de démarrer par le début. Je pense que ça fait sens. Ça fait sens.
Effectivement, ouais.
Stephanie, I have now another question for you. If you can share with us one or two stories of women whose life have been changed thanks to the work that you are doing at MRA.
Okay, sure. Well, no, two things. One, like as nice as it would be to take credit, first and say like this woman's life changed because of our work at MRA. That's kind of one of the problems with the women's movement worldwide is we always tend to take credit for things that as if we did it, when really perhaps what we did was just like make a little small contribution or plant a seed. So I don't want to take credit for something like that. I think the other comment, when you think about women's rights, folks are always often thinking about, what changed in the women, and we have to have women change. Women have to be empowered, women have to be economically independent, this, that, and the other. And that's that's sort of the approach called like fix the women. And we don't subscribe to that approach. We kind of think that the system and the state response has to change. And a lot of our work is to help empower women to participate, to create those changes where the changes should happen, which is in the system and in the state response. I guess I'll take one illustrative example, perhaps, to talk about sort of the multifaceted, holistic process. When we started, one of the towns, one of the small towns in a semi-rural area where we work, we helped a group of young women set up an association. There was no sort of women's association there before. And this town was really known for its brothel prostitution. Okay, there was, we set up we started collaborating with this association. And the first thing they did was to start doing legal and human rights education, the grassroots level program that Saida mentioned. And the association did a lot of outreach, went into the brothels, talked to the owners, talked with everyone, and they were able to integrate the sex workers into the legal and human rights education program. So the women would come out of the houses and go to the sections and learn about, what the family code says and what's the criminal code says and this. But the association didn't have separate classes for the sex workers. They just had all the women together. And at the beginning, the other women in the town were not happy about being mixed in with the sex workers, and they didn't, want to, they thought they didn't want to mix with them and stuff. And there was a lot of prejudices and discrimination and stuff going on. But as time went on in the program, the relationships between the women changed. And it was to the point where if one of the sex workers wasn't there, the others would say, where is she? Is she sick? Does she have a problem? Let's go out and find her, etc. So that sort of changed the relationships with the women. Then as time went on, one of the women who was a sex worker beneficiary of the legal and human rights education programs actually integrated the executive board of the NGO. So was on their board, participated in decision-making, became a project manager herself within the NGO. So we like this example because it's an example of the individual empowerment of the social worker herself, but it also demonstrates the diversifying and inclusive impact it had on the NGO management structure. Okay, and just then to take this up another level, to close the loop, this is one of the NGOs that, one of the several NGOs across the country that participated with us in our very long 10-year and with the end result, perhaps not entirely successful, campaign for a violence against women law in Morocco that was lasted over 10 years. Part of that, we did some international advocacy to the United Nations treaty monitoring bodies. And the first one we did was to the Committee Against Torture, responsible for monitoring Morocco's compliance with its obligations under the Convention Against Torture. And violence against women, which is our major thematic topic, is a form of torture as far as the committee is concerned. So we did, including this NGO, with the women beneficiaries, participants in their community, the sex workers and the other women, they had, we organized discussion groups, and the women talked about all their problems with violence. We wrote a shadow report to the UN Committee Against Torture. We were able to go to Geneva to present that report to the committee with the members of the partner NGOs, including this one. And we presented it, and the committee, we'd never done this before, so we were very intimidated, and this is a UN committee, and we had our little flyers that we gave them with our talking points and our questions. And then all of a sudden, the committee got out our flyer, and the different members looked at the Moroccan government, and they said, "We have questions for you." And they started reading out all of the questions on our flyer about violence against women. What are you doing for violence against women? Where's this law? Why is marital rape not criminalized? All the issues that the women themselves, including the group of women in this small town, had raised. And the Moroccan government actually had to spend that overnight preparing responses to those questions for the UN committee. And so it was quite, I think, empowering for all of us, the NGOs present, as well as the women back in the village, because once we all left Geneva and came back, the NGO went back and told the women, look what happened. The Moroccan government was held accountable for their lack of response to violence against women, thanks to your feedback. So that's sort of the trajectory that we like to describe of, one woman, relationships in a community changing, giving contributions, and having an impact on the state response to issues that concern you. That's kind of an example of the change we like to share.
It's a really beautiful story, and it really illustrates planting a seed and see after many years what will happen thanks to this work. Saïda, j'ai une question concernant la pandémie, le Covid, là, les derniers mois qui se sont passés au Maroc. Et j'ai vu que vous avez envoyé une lettre au gouvernement marocain pour l'appeler à prendre des mesures urgentes contre les violences faites aux femmes qui ont augmenté durant la pandémie. Que s'est-il passé? Qu'est-ce que le gouvernement marocain a fait à la suite de cette lettre?
Oui, effectivement, dès le début de confinement qui a duré 4 mois au Maroc, c'était vraiment une période un peu difficile pour nous, les ONG, mais c'était plus difficile pour les femmes. Parce que être confiné avec le mari ou avec le partenaire dans un espace limité, donc on savait qu'il va y avoir beaucoup de travail, mais comment on peut un peu dépasser les barrières du confinement et arriver à ces femmes. Donc là, on a établi un système avec tous nos partenaires partout au Maroc, un système de communication, groupe WhatsApp, groupe Facebook, email, etc. L'objectif, c'était de partager les informations, de partager les renseignements sur les mesures qui sont prises, les services disponibles, sur prévalence des violences, etc. Pour cela, on a aussi mis comme un questionnaire pour aider les associations à faire le monitoring de qu'est-ce qui se passe jour par jour, s'ils reçoivent plus d'appels de femmes, si les femmes elles trouvent plus de difficultés pour communiquer avec les associations, quels sont les services disponibles par les autorités. Donc, ce système de communication nous a permis en premier lieu d'apporter de l'aide aux femmes. Donc, il y avait plusieurs femmes dans plusieurs régions qui ont été coincées avec personnes violeurs, violents qui n'ont pas où héberger. Donc, c'était facile de communiquer avec l'association la plus proche de ces femmes pour leur trouver où héberger, ou leur trouver l'autorisation pour se déplacer vers leur famille, ou juste prendre le contact avec le procureur pour faciliter le contact entre la femme coincée à la maison et le procureur, etc. Donc, ce système de communication nous a permis en premier lieu d'apporter les services concrets aux femmes. Mais ça nous a permis aussi de faire un peu le monitoring sur les lacunes dans les réponses des autorités publiques en cette période. Donc là, on a pu quand même détecter plusieurs problèmes dans la réponse des autorités, qui était un système un peu basé sur le présentiel et pas sur le fait que la femme elle peut appeler ou même ce qu'ils ont mis en place, il s'est basé sur l'accès à l'Internet, alors que la majorité des femmes n'ont pas accès ou bien c'est le mari qui prive la femme du téléphone, ou bien la femme qui ne savent pas les requérir, ou bien la femme qui n'a pas les moyens d'avoir le connexion, etc. Donc ça, c'est en plus de plusieurs autres lacunes dans la réponse, ça nous a permis grâce à ça, de dresser une liste de plaidoyers avec des points concrets. Voilà, si vous voulez vraiment une réponse immédiate d'urgence aux violences faites aux femmes, voilà ce qu'il faut faire. Mais aussi, ça nous a permis de mettre et de constater certaines réponses exemplaires ou certaines réponses positives dans de comment les autorités au niveau local, elles étaient créatives pour dépasser ces lacunes. Donc ça nous a permis de dresser une liste de certaines pratiques positives, certaines pratiques, des bonnes pratiques ou des meilleures pratiques qui se sont développées pendant le confinement, qui vont nous permettre pour se baser, pour faire du plaidoyer, pour demander que ça soit intégré dans la loi. À titre d'exemple, par exemple, dans un petit village dans la région de Marrakech, les gendarmes, ils ont pris la décision d'une façon d'initiative de déloger le mari et de l'éloigner de la maison conjugale au lieu de faire sortir la femme, chose qui n'existe pas dans la loi. Donc, au niveau pratique, ça va nous permettre dans le futur de dire, regardez, ça marche. Et ça a marché. Et c'était pas seulement, c'était dans un petit village. Donc, pourquoi vous refusez que la loi pour les violences faites aux femmes intègre l'éloignement du mari et de ne pas continuer à faire sortir la femme et les enfants et de les emmener dans les auberges et je ne sais pas, où les centres d'hébergement, etc. pour les femmes. Donc, pendant le leçon sortie ou le leçon acquis du confinement, c'est qu'il y a beaucoup de choses qui peuvent être faites et qui ont été faites pendant le confinement et ça va nous argumenter notre plaidoyer dans le futur.
Oui, c'est ce dont on parlait un peu aussi avant. Les périodes comme celle-ci permettent à plein de personnes d'être créatives. Et le fait de prendre ça et de montrer au gouvernement, regardez, ils avancent plus vite que vous, c'est très efficace.
Voilà.
Stephanie, what are your goals, the goals of the organization for 2021 after all of that?
Well, our first goal is hopefully to get out of Rabat and go back into the field because we are usually traveling around quite a bit, to the different, zones in Morocco we work in and to Tunisia, etc. Beyond that, I think in 2021, we've got sort of three big thematic areas we're working on. The first one is the impact of the pandemic on violence against women. So picking up where Saida left off, what we're doing is specifically some work, the local NGOs are working with their local systems actors, the police, the law enforcement, and health sector, actually to do that kind of assessment and mapping of the good responses, the good practices that came out of the pandemic to see exactly if they can't be consolidated into law. Along those lines, we're also working with let's call them non-traditional intermediaries who played a huge role during the lockdown, pharmacists, local little shop owners, tele boutique owners, the people who carry bags at the train stations, cyber cafe owners, etc. All these people who were kind of frontline responders to women victims of violence without knowing it, that women turned to during the lockdown. So we're part of that initiative. The local NGOs are also working with them to sort of figure out what they might need and build their capacities on women's human rights should, as community resources, should this ever happen again. Let me just show you, we also, as part of our COVID No to Violence Against Women During COVID thing, we're working with the local NGOs now to do special face masks for the 16 days of activism on violence against women, which is going on now. We just got them in the mail. Nice. So see.
Very nice.
Yeah. These are special no violence against women face masks. They were produced by women's cooperatives across the country. We're working with a couple local partners, and so women's cooperatives produce these. And this one says in Arabic and Amazigh, the state has responsibility to protect me from violence. So that's the first thematic area we're working on for in 2021, where the second thematic area that we're focusing on is sexual violence against women, so rape and sexual assault, and with the goal of having with the local NGOs coordinating and working with the local state actors, again, in the justice, law enforcement, and health sectors, to have a better response to sexual violence against women in these cases. We would love to see, although I'm not sure this is a reasonable, realistic goal for 2021, but a more long-term goal, we would love to see sexual relations outside of marriage in Morocco decriminalized. Because right now, sexual relations outside of marriage are illegal in Morocco, which is the single most biggest obstacle to women reporting rape because they risk being prosecuted themselves. Then the third thematic area that we're working on in 2021 is technology facilitated violence against women. So everything like cyber stalking, revenge porn, online harassment, and all of that. And we'll be working with internet service providers, so telephone companies, the local telephone companies, as well as social media platforms, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and all of that, to see how they can better address technology facilitated violence against women to, prevent it from happening through their platforms and services and technologies, protect women better, and punish the perpetrators. So those are our three sort of agenda items for 2021.
It's very interesting and super important. As you know, I spent also a bit of time in Morocco, and I could understand, I don't know, but see for young Moroccans how it can be complicated, this interdiction to have a relationship, a sexual relationship outside of marriage, and what kind of pressure, huge pressure it put on young Moroccan women. So it's very important for them to be able to do as they would like of their own life. Saïda, Amera a reçu déjà des dons du monde entier, y compris de plusieurs gouvernements. Nous sommes, Youth Mundi est très heureux, Youth Mundi et ses clients sommes très heureux de pouvoir soutenir votre projet cette année. Est-ce que vous pouvez nous dire si vous avez un plan spécial par rapport au soutien du coup de Youth Mundi et de ses clients?
Oui, effectivement, oui. Entre nous, ce don, c'est comme un cadeau de Noël pour nous. C'est vraiment, ça fait, je pense, 2 ou 3 ans que moi et Stéphanie, on parle sur un projet qu'on aimerait vraiment faire. Mais il n'y avait pas vraiment les moyens pour l'attaquer. C'est notre Marsad Nissa, qui est un observatoire des décisions de justice pour les droits humains de la femme, que nous avons lancé, ça fait plusieurs années. Et c'est un programme qui est venu après le programme de litige stratégique dont on avait déjà parlé pour les avocats et pour plaider les normes internationales devant les tribunaux. Et grâce à ce travail, on avait constaté qu'il y a beaucoup de problèmes de partage d'informations et sur la jurisprudence, qu'il n'y a pas vraiment une circulation, un moyen ou un canal où l'information pourra passer pour que tous les avocats partout au Maroc ils peuvent être au courant facilement de la jurisprudence qui se développe à travers le pays sur la question des droits humains de la femme. Donc, l'idée de ce Marsad Nissa est venue de là. Un observatoire pour la collecte et la publication de différentes décisions de justice qui touchent les droits humains de la femme et qui sont à travers le Maroc, et aussi qui va permettre de surveiller et documenter la façon dont les différents tribunaux ils tranchent dans les affaires des droits des femmes. Ça permet aussi d'analyser les différentes décisions qui sont rendues à partir d'un point de vue droits humains et à partir d'une approche genre. Donc, c'est un site web ou une base de données électronique où on permet à tous les avocats qui ont pu avoir une décision devant un tribunal de le partager. Et comme ça, les autres avocats, ils peuvent facilement avoir accès ou n'importe quel chercheur en droit ou n'importe même femme bénéficiaire qui a besoin un peu de savoir plus sur des cas similaires à son affaire, il pourra avoir accès facilement à ce site web avec des mots de recherche qui sont accessibles à tout le monde, donc aux professionnels comme au public, pour se documenter, chercher, savoir, partager, etc. Ce site actuellement, il atteint plus de 14 000 des personnes qui le consultent. Mais pour nous, depuis que nous avons élaboré un site web ou un Marsad similaire à Tunis, on commence à sentir le besoin qu'il faut mettre à jour la plateforme de ce site web, qu'il faut aussi apporter certaines mises à jour au niveau des mots de recherche, au niveau des mots-clés, etc. Introduire les nouvelles lois qui ont été promulguées depuis, etc. Donc, il y a vraiment beaucoup de travail qui doit être fait sur ce site web. Mais jusqu'à maintenant, on n'a pas eu vraiment les moyens pour l'attaquer. Et l'idée pour nous, c'est grâce à cette donation, on va pouvoir le mettre à jour et il va être opérationnel le plus rapide possible. Donc, encore une fois, merci beaucoup parce que ça va nous permettre à faire quelque chose qui nous tient vraiment à cœur et pas seulement un projet qui a été élaboré et ça fait, mais c'est quelque chose vraiment qui nous tient vraiment à cœur.
Merci aussi beaucoup de continuer à développer ce projet parce que c'est aussi, que ce soit le collaboratif, le partage d'informations, c'est aussi quelque chose qui est très important pour nous et on y croit beaucoup dans la possibilité de réussir à collecter le droit et à le rendre plus utile. Donc, on ne pouvait pas imaginer un projet plus en ligne avec notre idéologie aussi à Youth-Midi, donc on est très contents. Stephanie, how can other donors contribute to the organization if they would like to?
Well, in terms of, we happily accept, financial contributions and support by bank transfer. Our bank is set up to receive donations and transfers in hard currency, so not just Moroccan dirhams, etc. And then we're also happy to direct potential donors to some of the local partner NGOs that we work with at the grassroots level across the country if they're interested in a particular region or area of the country or prefer to support a smaller local grassroots association. We can facilitate that as well.
I know that many of our users and clients, women's rights is very important for them. So I hope they will see this interview, and I urge them to contact you directly. We will put all the links beside the video so they can be in touch with you. Are there other ways for people, for donors, to help you other than making a financial contribution?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, where we found supporters, donors to be useful and very helpful and contribute to our work has been, well, first of all, with facilitating access to information or resources, right? Sometimes donors, by virtue of their jobs, their positions, et cetera, have access to certain information or different resources, whether technological or otherwise, that it's useful to have shared with. Where we've also found donors quite helpful for our advocacy work is facilitating relationships with decision makers and other key stakeholders for our advocacy. That's also because we're working so much on the ground, having the support of meeting those higher level decision makers is also quite helpful. And then, as Saida mentioned, with our Marsad Nisa online observatory of local court decisions related to women's rights that we have in Morocco, and then a second one as well in Tunisia, we're currently exploring the possibilities for having legal volunteers with Arabic skills contribute to the synthesis and analysis of those decisions.
So it's a very good point, and we had several legal contributors at Youth Mundi who speak Arabic, and we still have several today. I think 3. We will also pass the message on them and let them know to be in touch with you if they would like to contribute to the project. I have one last question, but before to ask this question, I also want to thank Luciana and Sneha from the Youth Mundi team who helped us to prepare this interview, to work on this idea for the past week, and more generally the whole Youth Mundi team who voted for you and gave us the opportunity to have this chance to discuss. And I will ask my last question in French, but I guess you will both give us an answer. My last question is, quel est votre message à toutes les femmes?
Ok, en toute sincérité, j'ai pas vraiment des messages pour les femmes. Vu que la majorité des messages, des programmes, des activités jusqu'à aujourd'hui, ils ont été adressés à la femme et le fardeau de changement a été vraiment mis sur le dos de la femme. Donc, mon message plutôt va être destiné pour tous les intervenants publics ou privés, à tous les hommes. Si on veut vraiment des changements, et surtout si on veut vraiment mettre fin aux violences contre les femmes, il nous faut des changements, mais des changements de comportement concrets de la part des hommes. Donc, s'il va y avoir des actions, ils doivent vraiment cibler les hommes et les comportements des hommes.
Je pense que c'est une très bonne idée. Le travail est sur les épaules de tout le monde et il ne faut pas laisser penser que c'est les femmes qui doivent se sortir elles-mêmes de la situation. L'éducation des hommes est très importante. Stephanie, do you want to add something? Or?
I mean, I guess I would just add to build on what Saida said, because it's to all the women out there, whatever, you might be going through, it's not your fault. First of all, I think we can't say that enough, no matter where we are. One of the things we've found in our violence against women work is that women are continually being blamed by their communities, by their families, being blamed by the justice system. The entire legal response to violence against women is based on blaming the women. Women then internalize that and blame themselves. So I guess the main thing I would say is it's not your fault. And the best slogan I ever saw on a tote bag at a conference once was, "Hey girls, you're not ugly, society is." So I guess that's what I would have as my last word.
That's perfect, and it was such a pleasure to have this discussion with you. Thank you once again for all the inspiration that you gave to me, to us, but also to I believe all the people who will be listening to us today. And I hope that this pandemic will be soon over, and we can see each other in person very soon. Saïda, Stéphanie, merci beaucoup pour cette interview, et je vous dis à très bientôt.
Merci beaucoup à vous, à toute l'équipe. Shukran bzaf.